What we're seeing in 2021 is without question an increase in the amount of regulatory enforcement of data protection law. So we've known about the laws for a number of years, we've known about the GDPR and what a broad and comprehensive regulatory regime it is, and over the last 12 to 18 months we see the Data Protection Commission and its office being much more active in its engagement with organisations in terms of enforcement and in terms of the regulatory expectations that compliance is occurring. So for organisations, and in order to be ready and prepared and to make sure that they're not on the wrong end of an enforcement action, they need to ensure that their compliance and that their approach to data protection law is kept up to date and is constantly being refreshed. Another interesting aspect of data protection law is that between 2016 and 2018, after GDPR was published and before it took effect, a lot of guidance was published explaining to organisations how regulators expected compliance to occur. What we see now 3 years later, after a lot of case law and a lot of regulatory engagement, is that expectations of regulators have moved on and have evolved somewhat. So it's important for organisations not to be relying on what they did in 2018, but they need to revisit and learn what regulatory expectations are today in terms of compliance. For example, if you look at privacy policies, which are principally used by organisations to communicate with data subjects, in 2018, there was a way of drafting them according with guidance that was issued around that time and endorsed by the European Data Protection Board. However, we see from regulatory enforcement today that the expectations of the Data Protection Commission and of the European Data Protection Board have changed and evolved and are greater in terms of the level of detail and the level of granularity of the disclosures that must be set out in these privacy policies. So organisations need to be revisiting, updating and refreshing its transparency documentation.